Thank you for joining me on another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. Today I'm going to be talking to, surprise, surprise, another EMF alum, also an EMT, meaning Elite Mentorship Forum and Elite Mentorship Trainer, somebody who's actually gone through and not just gone through the material, but has actually taught cohorts and actively. And so I'm really excited to see where this goes, see where the conversation weaves, how we can play with these ideas that we've learned, and how we can relate them to how they've really helped us improve our lives, get ourselves into a better sense of who we are, where we're going, and really just enjoy each other's space that we give. And like I said, I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And as always, like and subscribe, give a comment anywhere. If we lose you on something, make a comment. Let us know where we lost you. That way I can work to do better to direct the conversation a bit more if necessary. And thank you again for tuning in, and I think you're in for a real treat. Sue, thank you so much for coming and joining us on What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. You came at very high regards and from Christine, and I really enjoyed my time speaking with her and hearing what she had to say, and I was really excited to hear you take me up on the offer. And first off, before we get into my enjoyment and talking about what I want to talk about, I'd really love for you to introduce yourself and just share what's kind of going on. I guess you guys are running a cohort right now, which is exciting. And just, maybe introduce yourself and just tell us what's up.
Cool, with pleasure. Well, thank you, first of all. Thank you for Christine for recommending me, and thank you for for following up and inviting me. I think this is probably my first official podcast that I've actually attended, so I'm honoured. And you can tick off a first for me, which
Awesome.
I've been doing a lot lately, which is great. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough happening. So I joined the Elite Mentorship Forum EMF 12 on Peter's cohort back in June 21, I think it was. I was in a very, very low place. I'd been typical, like everyone, doing lots of, personal development, just on that treadmill wheel, just not getting anywhere. And then after that 6 months, I totally transformed. A totally different person. I look back now at my introduction video and like mind blows me as to how far I've come in that time. One of the best things I ever did was actually agree to be an EMT, and Christine and I became the community managers for EMF 16, which is just, it was such an incredible journey, and we just saw so many people transform just their lives and their relationships, and it was just, and I've gained so many beautiful friends out of actually EMF 12, the alumni, everything. Last year, Christine and I both went over to the Tenerife for the alumni festival. Yeah. And after that, I went around England staying with EMF alumni. So, and I've just created friends for life. It's just incredible how I could just walk into these people's houses and with open arms from both sides of the party and leave as like deep long-term friends, and that's just the level of consciousness that I think is built through EMF, which is just beautiful. In that time, I moved from Wellington. I'd grown up in the Waikato, moved down there for 6 weeks comment, landed there for 26 years, got married, had kids, got into business, fell out of business, lost lots of money, got divorced, and just, and then I moved back up to the Waikato to a job I've never done before, managing a wedding venue. But it was constantly amazing, never surprised. The people that I knew that I'd actually met years and years ago reached out to me and said, "We've got this amazing opportunity. Are you interested?" And I went, "Hell yeah." It was just like my dream come true. I was going back to the Waikato and doing this job. And and then I've been here for the year and a half and had those travels in between. that time, I was graceful enough and honoured to meet Christine, like Lois, that you mentioned, and her and I have been on this incredible journey of growth and contribution for helping each other grow and contributing to that growth, but also growing within ourselves. So I've had been hearing a lot about mirror reality lately, and it's just coming true. You know, everything that I need to grow into, or that to become that person that I need to do the next step, is constantly just flowing to me, which and has done for a while. So yeah, very very honored to be in my life and who I've become in that process. I've developed this amazing relationship with my mum that I never ever thought I would have had. My two boys are closer than ever. So yeah, and our current EMF, we've just done module 12, so we'll be Q&A for that next week. So they're very close to graduating, and again, we've just seen some incredible transformations. It's just so honoured to be part of that journey with them. They do the work, and we're there to support and contribute for them. So really exciting. It'll be our first own EMF, and we're looking forward to the next one. So
Yeah, for
exciting
real.
time.
That is very exciting. Well, and like I remember when I graduated, and just how, you know, what it really reminded me of is when I was a kid, I didn't have a ton of friends. I had a few, and I didn't necessarily have a lot of love in my house, so I fell in love with reading. And I'd read these fantasy novels and get caught up reading for like 5 or 6 hours a night. And when that book would end, there was a sense of finality and like farewell, and it hurt. Like and it wasn't the best feeling. It certainly had some bittersweetness to it. And in the 6 months, like you said, it just radically changed the trajectory of my life. A lot changed within that 6 months. I mean, a whole lot. I'd never even heard of anyone who was, worth their salt say that they were a healer. And yet then I met Ed Stracher, and then I learned under Ed Stracher, like what. And so I found myself following ideas that I would have been too cowardly hiding in my head to even try to see if they were real. Like a
Right.
coward, like a naive coward, I just like, well, that would be difficult for me to do. So let me save myself some pain, and let me not even try it. And I'll just make fun of it and feel like I'm a superior person. And just questioning, hey, what value does this have in my life? That's a powerful question. And I don't know that, while that's so simple, I don't know that I'd be able to feel the power of where that question goes without not just Peter's training, but the group, being able to share my ideas with the community, being able to hear other people make themselves vulnerable and just share from their heart, and then allowing me the same space. You grow into the person. You figure out who the hell you want to be, and you figure out how to grow into it. And I mean, what better gift is there than that, right?
Yeah. And I sort of always knew, I suppose, deep down who I was meant to be, but I just didn't know how to get there. And that was part of that growth perspective, was, being able to have conversations, safe conversations with people that you knew were sort of on the same wavelength, but different. There was that safe environment. You could just actually honestly talk about stuff, which then allowed that was the value, I think, as much as anything. And then you could actually be you and find out who you is. And that to me was big part of the value.
Yeah. Well, and then the idea that Peter said that we're all programmable by design. We don't get to choose that. What we get to choose is how we're programmed. It's like, dude, that makes so much sense. I mean, that just is so, it's so ridiculously self-evident or evident rather, that it's obscured to the vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that was part of my journey, I think, was that was really important for me was that I had realized that I'd come into this life, and I actually got this from the really, it was being fed into me and I was understanding it, but I really got it when I listened to Conversations with God. And that was that whole, I'd come into this world my soul had come into this world for a reason. And then I went through my childhood and my life to go and find out who I'm not meant to be, so that I can find out who I'm meant to be. And that just like blew me away, which sort of allowed me to understand or accept and acknowledge this things that I had been through were for a reason. They weren't just me making dumb decisions or whatever, it was like I got slapped a few times. You got a flick on the nose, got a bit of a knock to the head and hit the footpath a few times, but there's a certain amount of everything. So I'm sort of close to it now. I'm still getting the odd knock on the head, but literally, because I've just given myself concussion again. But
oh no.
I'm getting there slowly. But yeah, so obviously there's a message there that I still haven't quite got, but that's okay, because I'm still learning who I'm meant to be. And I think that was that important part that I got from EMF. It's always a journey. Get where you're coming from about that reading a book. I could never, as a child, finish a book, put it down and pick up another one. I could never understand how people could do that.
Yeah.
I sort of like had to go through this grief process, I
Yeah.
suppose, of really letting go of what I'd been reading, because I'd become so attached to it. It would take me probably a month before I could pick up another book and go, oh, let's start this one, and really allow myself to be engaged truly in the now in that book. And I think for me, that's what happened with EMF. I'm even going from EMF 16 to our next EMF with Kristen and I. There was that gap, because I couldn't just, like those people on that cohort, I want to say my babies, they called us mamas, so they were our little Bubba Bears sort of thing. And I couldn't I felt like I just left them and then just quickly moved on. I wasn't honoring them as people. So there was a reason I believe there was a gap between that and this one that we're doing now. So I had to let them go. I had to let them into their world of journey, growth and contribution.
Well, and when you think about that, right, mama bird kicking the baby bird out of the nest, right, that's necessary for the world to go on, right? Because
exactly.
if we didn't experience that pain, humans understand things through polar opposites. And if we didn't experience pain, we wouldn't be able to experience joy. That's just, because light and darkness are just the absence of the other, right?
Exactly.
And so we see things based upon its complete polar opposite. And what's interesting, though, knowing at least what I do with Peter Sage, I wonder now, does that, and by all means, maybe it does. Do you think that identity of needing to grieve and wait serves you to the best that it could in a, I don't want to sound callous, but in a business capacity, right? Because at the end of the day, like, look, we're here for the best benefit of everyone, but also we're also running a business. And I went and had a sacred healing ceremony with peyote on Saturday, and it reminded me a lot of EMF, in that there are all these people sitting around in the circle, about 15 of us, and they were just sharing from their heart. And there was a lot of to me going on, a lot of this, victimhood. So I had to kind of protect my energy, so I didn't get any of that on me. But I still shared from my heart. I was listening to them. I hope that me being there and what I shared, I got a lot of good feedback. I hope it helped raise some consciousness, but it certainly helped me as well, because I struggled with that idea, right? Clients that I heal, like, am I here because it puts food on the table, or am I here for their best and greatest benefit? And asking that question, that nuanced question, being curious about it, and actually wondering where it goes. really led me to the idea of, I mean, what did Peter say in the first place? That money, money follows the value that you put out in the world. It's like, oh, well, that's an obvious answer then. I'm here for their best benefit. So if I am, I'm going to put that value in the world, and I'll simply be, I'll get the recompense of the value that I'm putting out there. And I'm curious, does the grieving process still serve you in a way of disrupting business, or does it serve you because it's really something that you love to unpack that? Where do you see that grieving process now? Because I've certainly looked at my own life and my own necessarily my need to grieve after a book much differently now.
It's really interesting that you asked that question, because I've been looking at, when we're being talked about this whole marketing and stuff about niching down, and just to start with, I was like, not niching, I'm just not doing it. This is for everybody. We've got to give it to everybody. And yep. There was just this part of me that still can't decide what it is an EMT or EMF that I want to share. Who is my niche market, right? Who do I need to attract? Because people sell people, right? So I'm not just selling EMF, I'm selling what I've got to offer.
Oh yeah,
with that.
Which is a lot.
And it's interesting that you talk about grief, and the grief of letting that go, and does it serve me? Because one of the niches I've just really realized lately is grief is something I've been through a lot. Like, I've done it in my personal relationships, I've done it in business, I've done it, with family. It helped others go through it. So it's like, well, maybe grief is actually my niche. I've got lots of experience in it, so maybe that's where I should be going. But I haven't obviously done enough as well, because I believe you. I think maybe it doesn't serve me not being able to move straight on, because that highlights something not just in a book or a course. I really struggle that with in my life. Like, when my ex-husband and I split up, oh my God, you should hear the difference in the story. Oh, Joshua, it's honestly, I could have spoken to you for about 2 hours on the story of how it happened. 2 people broke up in a relationship, right? That's what I've got down to. Excellent.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, but it really, and I came across an email that I didn't even know I had, and it had all of these emails from when my ex and I were splitting up, and he said a word. He said, "This is just paralyzing you, Sue," and he was so right. But that couldn't let it go. So it was. And maybe we've come on this call for you to actually highlight that to me. That's an area mirror. Like I said, the mirror keeps coming for me. It's like, so maybe that's it. So no, I hear you, and no, it doesn't serve me from a business perspective, and even a personal relationship with myself. It doesn't serve me either, because I hold on to things.
Yep.
So it's being able to let go of things that I think are important.
Well, and so I had a conversation with Chris Mate a little while ago, and he had such a phenomenal point about and this lovely gentleman lives there in Australia, near you, not exactly where you are, but
I love Chris. I know Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so he said that one of the things he loved about Peter is just that, here's a way for you to, in my words, not his, but here's a way for you to save your life, but I don't want to be your Messiah. I'm going to bow out so you can figure out that you can be your own. And what a beautiful way. Like it's not that this dude could easily be out there. Look at me. I'm so amazing. And he makes us all feel significant. Because that, every single one of us want to hug him. It's like, hey, bro, I really love you. I really do. I've got this.
I have hugged him. I got to hug him in Tenerife.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And we gave him a Panamu as well, so that was really special.
I think I'd like to go this year. I'd really like to go, not just to see Peter, to maybe see Archie. That would be fun. But to meet to meet the other people in person, right? Because there's something special about even meeting over Zoom. There's something special about even meeting over Zoom, but when you get a meet in person, there's something magical about that. Yeah.
It's hard to explain, and it was so powerful. A few of us stayed in the same hotel in Tenerife, and we adjusted the whole vibe of the whole hotel. All of us together in that level of consciousness. We were just buzzing, and someone was in one of the lifts, and this person turned around them and said, "Are you one of that Peter group?" And they said, "Yeah." Said, "Oh my God, we love you guys. You're so amazing. You got so much high level of blah, blah, blah." And this person just rattled off, and this person's going, it's like, so that is the power of being together and actually meeting people. It's unexplainable. It was just like, we'd never physically met people, but we knew who they were, and it was like, oh my God, that's so good to see you. Yeah, and we were all sad when we left, and yeah, so it is, if you can, not if,
When. Yeah.
not, it is, and it is now. You set the intention, you're there in November.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I actually just went, right, I'm going to the 50th, and I'm going on the cruise. It was like, no doubt whatsoever, and it happened. I'm a bit wishy-washy this year, because I haven't had something quite so profound that I really have set my intention for yet. But I know that when I do, I can manifest things.
That's awesome.
Very exciting.
And was this a new awareness for you that you didn't have before you met Peter Sage, the idea of manifesting?
Oh, heck yeah. I was so left brain. But that's the family so I grew up in a very gorilla-ish, wolfy, at the top corner family. So it was, don't imagine, don't dream, sit down, do as you're told, don't question. So I was very left brain, and that's part of where I think I've come full circle to understand that isn't me as a person. I am a dreamer. I can think, okay, this is going to happen, but I didn't know that I had that ability to do it. And I had no spirituality. I was scared of it. You mentioned the word God, and I was like, like, sort of wanting to be sick every time somebody said the word. I couldn't even say it, because that allowed me to go to a place that I was never allowed to go to. So I couldn't believe that was even there, even though, like, my mum grew up being religious in England, because we came to New Zealand when I was 4 years old. And they were from the northeast of England, where it was very strict. So I just knew none of that. I didn't even know there was a word called spirituality. Like, I was so left brain, it wasn't funny. So that was a big part of, I think, the transformation for me. Is I was always meant to be spiritual, but was never allowed to be. And Peter's work, his model of the world, brought from lots of other people's models, is, I love that module where we had to make a decision. Like, are we religious? Are we not religious? Maybe, but there's no maybe, like, take a stance and own it for a while and see how it goes. And that was the best thing ever for me. It doesn't matter what people ask me. There's something else in the universe, whether it's God or not, don't know. I'm not sucked into what I would call organized religion, but I do believe there's something out there. And I love the Lego analogy, whereas I've got this block here, this Lego brick, and this job. I said years ago, I could do that. Literally, I remember being at a wedding going, I could do that. I could organize that. I could organize it. And here I am. So yeah, I do believe that there is something. Sometimes I go back to my left brain and I go to the how, and nothing
We
happens.
are all only human, right? To be human is to err, and that's okay.
Exactly,
And when
right?
we err,
So
we can learn from it.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're getting there, and some things happen really, and it's like it's a journey, it's a learning. I've spent 50 odd years of my life not being this way, so I can't expect myself to get it right straight up anyway. But I'm
So
enjoying the journey now. Yeah.
you made a comment I want to follow up on, but I also heard a really interesting uh, idea that kind of juxtaposes religion versus spirituality. All right, imagine taking a fishbowl and putting it in the ocean, and that fishbowl inside of that is religion, and outside of that is spirituality. And then
Hmm.
you mentioned that the idea of God was somewhere you weren't allowed to go. I'm I'm wondering what you meant by that.
What did I mean by that? That's probably not fair, actually. It was just not talked about at home. We just didn't, Mum never talked about mass or anything like she went to as this kid. I almost wonder whether she didn't want to, maybe she was forced into religion when she was younger and Dad just wasn't interested. So it was never talked about in the house. So I would say I wasn't not allowed to go there, but I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't know what I didn't know. But then we did go. I remember actually we went to a friend up the street. They would go to church, and we went with them for a while. But I don't know whether you've asked a really good question there. Ooh, you've got me
Yeah,
thinking.
well, and so God for me has been complicated throughout the years. I joined the army at 19. When I joined, I was completely ripped out of everything that was familiar, and I barely had anything that made me feel safe. And so to take even that from me, and then throw me into this totalitarian environment, which apparently I decided, it'd be a good idea for me, is with this outrageously sized chip on my shoulder to go join a totalitarian environment where they govern every breath I take. And part of that was because I had a problem not trusting myself, not believing like that inner voice, and was
Mm.
so confused and conflicted inside that I'd have to have other people tell me who I was. Right. And when they tell me, I'd latch on to that. And so I create these limitations based upon what other people are seeing. And I'm effectively saying, please tell me, who I am. And people are like, oh, this is who you are, bro. And I created a lot of limitations there. And in the army, being stripped of a lot, trying to figure out how to survive, I was humanized first by people going to church. At first, in basic training, it was a way to escape the drill sergeants for 3 hours because I go to a Mormon church, and then later I just kind of this idea of God snuck up on me because I'd really been digging deep into philosophy. I've been reading a lot of Plato, Aristotle, Nietzsche, and I liked this idea of God. And so I really got sucked into, okay, well, what if there really is a God? And what if I've been the moron this whole time? And then I had this non-denominational, they might only be, no, I think they're across the world, called the New Testament Christian Church. Some of the nicest people I've ever met until you're gay. If you're gay, like what the they just venom dripping from their veins. You cause the world's hurricanes. And that was hard for me to grapple with. That was very hard. And
Mm.
because I so fell in love with the community and the love that I felt that I didn't really have as a child growing up, the sense of belonging and I guess significance really, that I just didn't have as the youngest boy in a place where there's no love. And when I finally was like, there's this schism between you love everyone, but now you hate gay people just because they're gay. This schism caused me to leave the church, and I didn't at any time navigate the place of where does dogma live and where does, God live, right? Where does dogma live and where does spirituality live? I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater and just said F everything. And I lived in a lot of fear after that because I had convinced myself of this idea of the lake of fire. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And so I battled fear for a whole lot of years. And, maybe about 3 years after I finally came to terms with just being okay that I didn't believe. I think I had a kid, and then the kid started me on a path to try to be better, just be better than what I had, be better than who I am at that moment. And I think releasing this old construct of God put me on a spiritual path that I didn't even know was happening, because I finally kind of allowed myself to let it creep in some way.
And where are you now on that journey?
I don't know how to answer that question fully, right? Because you don't get to connect the dots until you're looking back.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how high this mountain climbs. I've never met anyone like Ed Stracher. This guy starts coming on talking about demons and curses and witchcraft, and it's like, dude, you're bizarre, bro. Straight bizarre. But then, I've been following Sad Guru a lot, and I was like, should I have a conversation with Ed Stracher? Like, this is a thought in my head as I was watching a webinar, and Peter was on there with us too. And so, like, I'm drilling a hole through Peter's head with my, like, just staring at him, like, is this Ed Stracher guy for real? And Peter just had this little smirk on his face, like he's heard it all before, doesn't faze him, and so leaning on Peter's strength allowed me to listen to a voice I audibly heard in my right ear. And it was of Sadhguru, who said, life is about experience. Now, what's strange about that is he always follows up with, isn't it? Because he'll actually say a statement and then he'll say, isn't it? So then you're kind of forced to agree with his statement. And it's brilliant. But it left it for me to say, isn't it? Right? Life is about experience. And then I realized, it's kind of like that idea of the child that will never eat their vegetables because they know that they hate them, even though they never tried them. Right. And do I want to be a child? Right. Wasn't the whole point of me going through the elite mentorship forum is to be the 42-year-old man that I am and not be the 7 to 12-year-old, software that was finalized and became my personality. Right. And so just testing the water and being brave enough to spend a lot of money on figuring out how to heal people without even knowing what I was going to do with it, and just allowing the fact that it felt right. I didn't know I was going to start a business. And then Ed was like, well, in the great words of Dan Pena, the best way to do it is to get out and do it. I was like, what? Like,
you do that so well.
Well, and it's like the exact opposite of Peter Sage. And so Peter gave me this big brother kindly mentorship, and Ed gave me this gruff father energy.
Right.
And it was such a juxtaposition. It was such a wonderful difference, and they both really aided me. And I think I'm just starting my journey. Like, I think I'm just starting like the epic part of my journey. Right.
Yeah.
When things are really picking up in the book. Right. So Frodo's already left, Hobbiton. He's already gone to the, Riverdance, Riverdale, whatever, Lord of the Rings, You don't know Lord of the Rings? You live in New Zealand. How do you not know Lord of the Rings?
Look, I know of Lord of the Rings. I've never read the books. I haven't even really. I went to try and watch the movie, and within the first couple of minutes or whatever, there were orcs, and that was it. I was out of there because it gives me nightmares. I couldn't sit and watch it. The
Fair.
sort of big spiders, it's like
okay.
so
Hey, fair.
I did just recently, River, who's one of our EMF 12 folk, had just come over and visited, and she was like this real. She's read all the books and everything, and so I took her to Hobbiton. So I have now been, another first this year, I went to Hobbiton because it's about 20 minutes drive from where I live.
Oh, really? Wow, man.
Yeah.
So that's a bucket list thing for me to go visit Hobbiton. So if I'm in town, there's three people I need to see that I know of. One's you, one's Christine, and one's Cindy Francis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So it's actually that we were the threesome that all traveled from here to Tenerife together.
Oh, what? That's so awesome. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've been blessed to have all three of you now with you here on my podcast, just having wonderful conversations. And really, what I like to show people who tune into this is that there is no finite definition or story, for our lives. When we say, what is our destiny, we're kind of saying, hey, can you give me a limited construct to work in order for me to kind of understand it? But if we can start to get to a point where and this is something Peter talks about, which is perhaps, one of the 5 best things he could have given me was the certainty to deal with uncertainty. The fact that, what, Josh, you've gone through so much, you've lived through so much, you've obviously shown where you can manifest things in your life. Just trust yourself, trust with certainty, that, and send that certainty out and that signal out to the metaverse, right? The metaphysical universe, where meta being the above, right, the parent law set or rule set to the child rule set, and manifest something in your life. And so I'm just loving this journey. I'm loving the conversations that I have, the people that have come into my path, and the sense of camaraderie. I don't know that I've ever experienced that in another group. Like in the Army, it's pretty false because people kind of like each other and kind of don't.
Well, you're forced to, aren't you, really, to get on with each other because you're in a confined space, right?
Yeah. But like I'm going through my modules again with my group. We've got a core group of about maybe 12 to 14 people that show up consistently. And
what EMF were you on?
17.
17. All right. You just missed us.
I know I did. I did, however, train with Ed Fracher with Kat Singer. You should know her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so just meeting meeting the different people to help me understand that, and now that I believe in the God self, right? I am God looking at God, and anyone who's above me in, or what I would perceive as above me in, like, maybe in a more advanced, like, business situation, is something that I can do too, as long as I actually want to do it and take the actions necessary to move forward and just send the signal. And I'm doing the 5-day challenge with Peter right now. And today was day 2. And I find that if I'm going to be programmed, why not program myself with the people who make the most sense, who ultimately at the end of the day want me to just send out more love to people and myself. And I don't see any way in which there couldn't be a benefit.
Absolutely. Oh, look, and that's what I've said all along, just, and I agree with the whole upgrade your peer group, like I've said it to other people and they're like, what, peer group? That's like at school, isn't it? And it's like, well, no, it actually happens in your life all the time. You get to choose who's around you and how you want to think, but we actually get a choice in that. It's incredible, really. And I choose high conscious people to think about and be with. And another person that I've been training with lately, and so is Christine, I don't know if she mentioned it, was Rory Kilmartin's Balance of Power on archetypal relationships. And that has transformed my journey again, on top of like using Peter's models and work. Just that understanding of how people operate, like I said at the beginning, the relationship with my mum was just constantly, I was walking around on broken glass, or I may as well been on eggshells, and we were just constantly like this because my nervous system and my way of being was putting out stuff that was affecting mum. And all I ever wanted was for her to understand me. And I never took the time I just realized recently, I never took the time to understand her. So it's like I've spent all those years. Well, why don't you understand me? Why is it Christine, blah, 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 my sister, you know, da, 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 da. You don't understand me. Well,
Yeah.
I never stopped to understand my actions were triggering my mother.
Mm,
And
interesting.
if I look at my reactions or my triggers and how I react, or how foxy I'm being because I don't want to be locked down with time. Don't set me a time frame. I'll be there when I get there, you know, whereas mum needs a time, and you know, and that's how we lived our life at home. So that's that piece of work has been another really important part of my growth and journey. And you know, I'd never heard of a nervous system, you know, and how actually when you're dealing with two people, you're actually dealing with their nervous systems.
Mm, sure.
And weakness corrupts. So I was weak all the time because my mum was so strong. So I would corrupt, and then she would react and I would react. And that just forever went on, which is interesting. Which actually leads me to, I'd love to go back to, you said earlier about, and this is something I've been really working on, is my perception as I grew up, in the level of love that was actually in the house. I perceived there wasn't much love because I needed to have lots of hugs, and for somebody to, you know, give me this attention and sit down and hear me and understand me. And, you know, and that type of love wasn't in the family. So I grew up thinking there wasn't a lot of love in the house, but I sort of thought there was. So I'm just intrigued and about, was that the similar for you? So like, I now know, because I had a fear before going through Rory's work and actually through Peter's work. I realized I created a fear from the beliefs and perceptions that I grew up as a child, thinking that if I pushed hard enough, or I fought back, or I didn't apologize to mum when she thought I should, that she would actually walk away from me and leave me and would never talk to me again. I'd seen it happen with a friend, so I had truly
Dang.
created that belief. So because she's got that capacity, she just makes a decision, and you piss her off enough, and she's got the strength, she's a sort of wolf, she will just do it. So I always had that fear that that would happen. So the work I've been doing with Rory, I now realize that mum actually unconditionally loves me.
Mm,
There's nothing I could ever really do that would push her away to not love me. So I was just wondering, for you, when you were saying before that you didn't have love in your family, was that, did you think that was a perception as a child, or
there's a lot of that for
you
sure.
created?
There's a
Yeah.
lot of that. There was a lot of, so my childhood was kind of the um so my folks split when I was 2, and so I don't really have any sort of cognitive memories of my dad being married to my mom, and he didn't really spend much time or effort to reach out as a child. And my stepdad, that my mom married as a young child, he was, severely, had severe PTSD, would get drunk and just go on these tyrannical rages. And I learned pretty early on that the tyrannosaur doesn't see you if you don't move. And so what happened there, though, is that I'd learned to sink into the environment and not be seen by the monster. But that's the exact behavior that has me stand out at the school, right? Is that you can't sink in. That's one of the things at school is no matter how much you try to sink in, you're kind of standing out, especially the bullies who know how to look for that. And it made life much more difficult than it needed to be. Did I create it? Yes. Right. Because I had nothing. I was shown, hey, this is how you're treated. This is what home life is like. And I didn't really have at the time the tools to create a better story to tell myself. And
Mm.
so there was a lot of unworthiness. And, then I got very egoistic because I'm trying to prove myself that I'm good enough, or prove, that I'm good enough. but I don't believe in myself. And so I'm battling this. I don't really believe in myself, but I want to prove that I'm good enough. So then I start believing myself, even though I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And eventually it caused me to be put in a position where I had to defend that proposition enough to where I started learning how to do that first, and or at least, yeah, starting to get there and starting to learn things before I stand up for them and kind of examine the thoughts a bit more. So it certainly has served me in my path for sure. Did I manifest it? Yeah, I mean, that's just how the world works, right? And so I don't get to say, well, except for me, right, Sue? Don't you know my story, right? Don't you know my pain's more special?
No.
And it's such an interesting idea too, because when we reclaim our sovereignty, even from the terrible situations in our life, well, if God is all things, well, God is also that too. And if God is also that, well, Carl Jung had this idea that the lower the hell, the higher the heaven. Well, that's cool, because I've seen some scary places. So I'd really like to see how high I can go.
Yeah, it's funny because you're almost explaining my childhood too. Like I said to you, I would want to question. I was had this amazing mind that just wanted to run off in different directions, and I would get this, oh, you're just a dreamer, or so I would stop. So I shut down that part of me, and then at school, like you, the bullies found it. And, then I created a belief, well, I deserve to be bullied, which is actually, I'm just finishing up a very short ebook about limiting beliefs, limited life. And it's all about that bullying and the belief that I created and the perceptions. Like Mum's always said to me, she doesn't understand how I've got such a negative view of my childhood when my sister doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she was able to process it in a different way. She didn't need what I needed. But then, yeah, so it just took over my life. And then I went into my first job. My first job was a bully. The guy I went into business with was a narcissist. It's like, hey, let's just bring them all in so we can learn something, shall we?
Yeah.
But I've been, like, to rock bottom multiple times. Like I said before, when Bruce and I split up, I never felt that level of grief before. It was horrendous, and it did paralyze me. So I get where you're coming from. So if I've been down there, what have I got coming? Woohoo!
Yep. Well, so I spend a lot of time spelling out what my highest ideal of goodness is, right? This was an idea I got from Jordan Peterson, where he said probably the best thing you can do for yourself in your life is to create the highest ideal of goodness and become worthy of it by becoming it.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I mean, well, here I am, frankly. But with that, I updated it because I found that I was an approximate value of what I set out to be. And part of updating that is just this idea to create this awareness, to add value where I go, just by lifting consciousness. And I find that these bad places in my life, they really add a lot of value, because I can relate to people, right? It's so easy to look at somebody who's happy and who's shining, be like, oh, well, look how easy your life is. It's like, oh, really? Yeah. And usually the most vibrant people are people who have overcome their adversities and kind of allowed their obstacles to become their superpower, I think.
Thank you for summarizing that way. Because I'm still struggling. People say, oh, I saw you in this chat and I wanted to be, I'm like, just being me. I don't still to this day truly understand my value and what I bring, because I was always told I talk too much, or I think the world wasn't ready for my level of joyousness when I was little. So I blocked it all away and decided that wasn't good. So now it's starting to come out, but in a more controlled manner, because I've been through what I have. Now I'm starting to understand that actually what I have is spreading joy, love, and light. I am a lighthouse, and it's okay to shine. And that's what my life is. That's I can bring joy to people just by smiling or giving them this compliment as they're walking along the road. Oh, excuse me, I just kind of had to say, I love your dress, or I love your boots. I love the colours in them. Or no, you go like, who are you? It's like, oh, and then you see their eyes light up and they'll go, oh, thank you. And off they go. And you're like, yes.
So here's a question I have for you, because when that happens to me and I can tell that somebody's connecting with my energy, I can actually feel it now. I can actually feel my torus expand. I can feel it react. And do you think now that you have maybe a higher level of consciousness, which has raised your energy as well, that when people connect to your energy, that you're giving them more than just that gift? Because now you're giving them a lasting impression upon their energy field that they've now accepted, because you gave them this thing. They said, what? And just kind of like took it in, like, oh, tell me more. Right. And have you considered just that there's even more that you gave, right? Than just that compliment, that you've now imprinted some level of program for maybe their energy field to start to chew on and unpack.
And it's interesting you say that, because I did notice a while ago, I just walked into the supermarket and I was just on my way around, and this lady just started chatting to me. Hello, hi, nice to see you. And she said, oh, so pleased you came into my day. And I thought, well, you came into my day, but happy to go into your day. It's like, and I was like, what was that about? And I thought back to that moment. I was just in this high energy place where I was just minding my own business. I think I sneezed or coughed or something all at once, and she said, oh, bless you, or something. And I was like, I don't know how you can do that, but apparently I can. It's a hiccup and a sneeze or something all at once. It's like not very comfortable, but it's okay. And it was just like, you're right. I do give off more than just a smile or a compliment. I'm starting to probably realize the level of energy that comes off.
And now consider if they're in your community being taught by you, right? And just how much deeper that gift is. And the gift because the gift that you have of finding your best self, you're now in a place where you're coaching others and helping them get to that place. And like,
I can find it a complete honor. I really, really do. And one of the ladies that was on EMF 16, she just sat in the background, hadn't really said anything. I was embarrassed because she was on Balance of Power coaching program, and I didn't even know she was an EMF, because we had over 100 people, and if you don't come forward, then that was something I had to come to deal with, that you can't know everybody. And I can't help everybody. They're going through it themselves. But now she just said to me the other day, and it's like, I used to love your energy. I just, but I couldn't bring myself to speak up. And here we are. You're in my pod group facilitator for Balance of Power, and I get to be with you again. And then we started talking, and she's just new into EMT, and she didn't want to do it by herself. So
that's
now fantastic. We're probably going to partner up. So I've got now 2 partners. Wow. But it was, and that was that constantly amazed, never surprised. She put it out there that she wanted to do something or get to know me more, and there it is.
And now instead of creating events where you lack love, you're kind of having that abundance of love coming into your world, it seems. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's have you read or listened to Whatever Arises? Love that, by Matt Kahn?
No, I haven't.
Cool book. It's made a big difference again. These layers just keep happening for me.
Whatever arises.
Really cool book. Whatever arises, love that.
Whatever arises.
So basically, he says, like, whatever comes, it's for you. So love it. And then you start loving yourself, and you start loving things, and then it starts producing wider. So everything's for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's even like the idea of busting loose from the money game, right? Right there. You
Yeah.
know, had you noticed? So you've read that book,
Which one? No.
Busting Loose?
Do you know what? This is something new for me, because one of the beliefs that I had linked or created when I was little was I'm dumb.
Oh,
And
really?
from that created I can't read, I can't comprehend. So
Mm,
there was, for a long time, I stopped. I can't write, and I don't make good sentences, so I'd get writer's block. And since I've been clearing a lot of these beliefs, a new world is opening up for me again, because so that's why I haven't read that book, is because um, reading was hard. It was because I didn't believe I could get anything out of it, so I stopped
mm.
reading. So I went through pretty much EMF without reading any of the recommendations that Peter's
Oh, I've
suggested.
that's funny. So I read a few of them, right? So here's one, right? Power versus Force, the inside track, the busting loose from the money game. And then there was also breaking free of being yourself or something like that, Joe Dispenza.
Yeah,
Um,
love. Yeah, and then there's love yourself like your life depends on it.
Yeah, so I haven't read that one. So I've read a few. I haven't read all of them though, and so I'm kind of there where it was a lot. I mean, and having a new module every couple of weeks was really it was a lot like drinking from the fire hose. But I found that my container shifted to contain it. I just needed a little bit more time to sift through the data and allow it to settle and really start unpacking and creating the programming that I needed to run in my background. So then I can start automating things I don't that that serve me to my highest level until I find something better for it, and then start working on other things that I can learn. And
Well,
I
because gotta remember, like Peter says, like he might have been the 49th person to tell you that bit of information anyway. And you need to hear it again from somebody else for you to actually go, oh, dang, that becomes part of you. So there's no right or wrong either. I mean, I put my hand up now. There was a huge part with everything that was going on for me. I was dealing with my first big concussion. I moved from Wellington back up to the Waikato. I was in a new job. It was the middle of winter. You can hear the story, right? So there was no Wi-Fi in the house where it was warm. I had to go for the hall where it was freezing to have watch stuff. But I did it intellectually.
mm,
But that was okay for me at the time, because I had so far, I was so low, that anything that brought me up to where I needed to be was okay. So on my REM, if both of them, I've said I just did it intellectually, but now I'm doing it, knowing it, being it.
mm, I
So
love that.
yeah, and it was without even reading any additional books. I struggled to keep up. I was like, yeah. But I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning every week. I don't think I missed a call.
Dang.
Because our calls were, like 5 or 4 o'clock, and depending on where the daylight savings is, I think it was 2, 3, or 4 o'clock was the range that I was getting up. Luckily, I was in a job that I could go back to sleep afterwards. I had that flexibility, so I could make it work. But I don't ask people generally to do that in our cohorts.
Well, and then everyone from New Zealand seems to have to wake up at some outrageous hour, right? No matter what's happening. So I really applaud you for, your tenacity and perseverance and, dedication to show up. Well, Sue, this hour has really, just gone by in a breeze, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. I love your story. It's funny how many similarities, right? This rando dude here in Utah, and you in New Zealand, and just how similar our stories are.
Mm.
And when we realize that our stories are strikingly similar to pretty much everyone on the planet, then maybe we can start to be a little bit more forgiving and
Wouldn't that be
compassionate.
lovely?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
not it wouldn't be. It is. It is, because there's a group of us that have this goal of creating a high level of consciousness in the world. So it's got to pay off sometime. And I've actually got, one of my goals is I want to start putting parents and children through the program together, and somehow the parent goes through and the child goes through on their own, but then they have this bridge where they come at points and talk about what they've been learning, so they can understand each point of view, so we're not carrying on this huge divide of generational gap which is increasing horrendously. So that's where my end goal for EMT is. So yeah, that's my goal. So
well, that's
it
a
will
brilliant
happen.
idea. That really is a brilliant idea. Being able to, like, I just recently even was able to see my mom and dad as people and not as their labels. And it's been very empowering for me, which is weird, right? Like, I started seeing them as different than I was empowered. Like, whoa, that's strange. And I was able to let go of a lot of stuff, a lot of just childhood, BS that doesn't serve me. And it's awesome the way that life works. And I think that's a brilliant idea to bring parents and their kids, I'm assuming adult kids, through that.
I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I think the younger we can start, that I mean, obviously it'll be a process where they're facilitated through. So, depending on what the age of the child is, there's an age appropriate support there for them so they can understand the work. But the earlier they are, the less blocks
That's
that
true.
are in the way.
That's a good
because
point.
they're created at 7. Maybe we should be getting 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds. I don't know. That's the how. I'm just putting it out there. That's what I'm achieving. So the right person is going to come along and connect with me to help me on that journey to achieve that. I don't know how or what. It's just, that's my goal. So, but this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm going to reach out to you afterwards. And if you don't know this person, because there's a lot of names that I run through, and for some reason her name escapes me, but she does coaching specifically with people who want to understand, right, parent and kid counseling. And I don't think that she's an EMT, but I think that she would be able to bring a brilliant, sense of awareness into that area. And yeah, Krebs. Krebs, that's her last name. That's right. Why can't I think of her first name?
It'll come.
Yeah, it'll come. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. This has been such a lovely conversation. And Janet Krebs, Krebs. Janet. Yeah, that's right. Awesome. And you're brilliant. I love what you and Christine are doing. Again, one of my highest ideals of goodness is this idea that, what makes the master special is not that they're special, it's that they give this gift, and that gift is what makes them special, because the gift makes it so. And that's what you're doing. And so kudos to you. That's awesome.
Thank you. And same for you. If you're out there healing people and sharing the word as well, then that's your gift. So that makes you special. So thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't had such a cool conversation. It's such a natural flowing, just talking about things with somebody for a while. So
I appreciate that. And real quick before you go, if people want to reach out to you and become part of, whatever your next cohort's going to be, what would be the best way for them to do that?
At this stage, I'm still working on my page and things like that. But EMT Sue 22 at gmail.com is a great email to use. So EMTSUE22 at gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll get that updated in the description of the video. And
awesome.
Well, again, Sue, thank you again for joining me. And hey, my pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week, and really, frankly, rest of your life.
Thank you. Love you and stay amazing.
Awesome. Love you too.